What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Blade, and we're back with some more disturbing reactions. And today, that's right, as you can see, we got a banger, brand new video from Yapmaster called "The Most Disturbing Crimes at McDonald's." So without further ado,
these are some of the most disturbing crimes that happen at McDonald's.
Calm down. Without further ado, like and subscribe for more reactions. Road to 1K subs. Let's get it. Take it away, Yapmaster.
These are some of the most disturbing crimes that happen at McDonald's, and as the video goes on, things will only get worse. On the first...
Already that's a crazy title, the McNugget Crash Out. In 2010, we got the McNugget Crash Out. That's probably what I would do. I love McDonald's McNuggets. I need to do that challenge one time, eating 100 nuggets and then time myself. I should do that one time. Anyways, let's see why this person crashed out over McNuggets.
Day of 2010, Melody DeShane stopped at a drive-thru of a McDonald's branch in Toledo, Ohio at 10:30 a.m.
Okay, are we not surprised, guys? It happened in Ohio. I thought it was a meme, bro. I thought Ohio was a meme. Now, it's not a meme anymore, bro. Ohio might actually be a corrupted, crazy area.
To order a bucket of the restaurant's famous chicken
A bucket? You can order a bucket in 2010? Bro, we only got like the box. A bucket? Dude, I would have did that. Oh my god. 50 party pack. 50 nuggets? Bro, I'll eat that in like a day. Bro, I'm tempted just thinking about this. I need to try that challenge one time, bro. I have to starve myself for like the whole day. And then this is the only thing I eat, 100 nuggets. Let me know if you're let me know if you ever want to see me do that. What if I throw up? It is what it is. Let me know if you want to see me do a 100 nugget challenge. My skinny body ass man eat 100 nuggets. It's gonna be impossible. Maybe it will be. If I starve myself enough, take my time. I'm not gonna like. I'm gonna take my time. See if I can do it.
McNuggets. Now, if you aren't familiar with American fast food menus, meals like McNuggets aren't usual breakfast options. And while some restaurants might have them ready in the morning, they're usually staple lunch and dinner chicken strips. So when Melody came asking for McNuggets that early, it wasn't certain that she was going to have them. And when the
Oh, she went. Who the hell goes in the morning? What a noob. What a McDonald's noob customer, bro. Who the hell orders nuggets in the morning? Obviously, nuggets is a lunch menu. Shake my head.
person working at McDonald's told her that they didn't have any McNuggets ready, she absolutely lost it. After this point, the drive-thru worker tried to close the window, but Melody would simply put her hand through and try to hit the employee, and then said,
"Don't make me assume my ultimate form!"
What did she say? Run that back?
Put her hand through and try to hit the employee, and then said,
"Don't make me assume my ultimate form. Don't make me assume my ultimate form." Now, I watched a lot of anime, but never in my life did, as an anime character or villain, said the sentence. This is like some random person like tried to translate Japanese. It's like a bad translation. It's like early 2000s when you're trying to watch an anime subbed, and then this is the person who translates it. Don't make me assume my ultimate form.
Make me assume my ultimate form! I will do it!
The branch manager then tried to help, but Melody just kept trying to come through the drive-thru window, so she shut the door completely, but not before the two got very physical with themselves. Melody hit the manager several times, while the manager in retaliation grabbed Melody's hair. The employees were completely stunned, and Melody on the other side just kept banging at the window, screaming McNuggets, and at one point made another Dragon Ball Z reference. You want a piece of me? I will go Super Saiyan.
Who does she think she is? Like, you're not Caulifla, bro. You're not Kefla, you're not Caulifla. Like, you haven't been through enough to go Super Saiyan, bro. It's like a fraud, bro. She's a fraud trying to. She's just all talk, bro. She's saying she's a Super Saiyan. No. No, you're not, bro. You will not go Super Saiyan. You can't even go Kaioken, okay?
Said. She would then stop the banging, but instead reach for a bottle in her car and shatter the drive-thru glass before zooming off the scene screaming. The police actually eventually arrested Melody, and according to their reports, she was drunk during the entire incident. Melody was sentenced to 60 days in jail for vandalism and was ordered to pay around $1,500 for the damages to the drive-thru section. This, however, isn't the only time we'll see food crash outs on the list. This next case is very similar to Melody's chicken nugget case, just this time it was Egg McMuffins.
For the man that pulled a gun on a drive-thru employee over, you guessed it, an Egg McMuffin.
Yo, America needs to sober up, bro. Y'all don't need guns, okay? Swear to God, bro. These guys just... You guys think like guns are like toys. Like, they just get mad and they just pull it out. Like, you really gonna end someone's life over an Egg McMuffin?
Back in 2013, in Ohio,
The jokes don't... The jokes write themselves. The jokes write themselves. Ohio, 3 years later, another person from Ohio crashed out. It's not a meme. Ohio is what everyone said it was back when it became a meme.
man and his friends pulled up to a McDonald's around 3:30 a.m. and tried to order an Egg McMuffin sandwich. It was pretty early and the chances of McMuffins being available were low, but the men still insisted that this was what they wanted. When the employee told them that they couldn't get any McMuffins that early in the morning, things got heated between the men and the employee on duty, and they eventually began to exchange words. The man called the employee a slur, and when she spoke back, instead of keeping the dispute verbal or maybe just choosing to walk away, he decided to pull out a gun and proceeded to curse at her and drove off the scene. Now the employee was absolutely terrified. Her entire life had just flashed before her eyes, all because of an Egg McMuffin order. But despite that, she managed to put herself together and called the police. But by the time they arrived, the men were long gone, which makes it even scarier when they think that the culprit is probably still somewhere right now, terrorizing more innocent people. Now maybe this person was never caught, but believe me when I tell you the next case is a literal magic show.
A McDonald's employee in Washington saw her own stolen vehicle pop up in her drive-thru while she was working.
Someone stole her car and then pulled up to the McDonald's she worked at in the drive. Obviously, that guy probably didn't know. That's insane.
The miracle car case is one of the most magical cases that have gone down in a McDonald's. Because back in 2013, Virginia Maiden, a McDonald's employee in Kennewick, Washington, started her regular Tuesday with the shock of her life. That
Yo, remember when McDonald's looked like this? Look at that play place, bro. That's insane. Actually, I had never seen a McDonald's look like this. Is this only in America? Yo, I never seen a Canadian McDonald's like this. Actually, yo, it wasn't built like this, but it had a big play place. Like, it was like separate from the McDonald's. But this one is crazy, bro. This looks like it's like 2 floors.
Morning, Virginia woke up to not find her 1995 Toyota 4Runner sitting in her apartment complex's parking lot as usual. Apparently, she'd forgotten to lock the vehicle the night before, and since it was no longer there, it was pretty obvious that someone had stolen it. Virginia spent hours looking for it, but all her efforts weren't paying off, so she reported the case to the police and headed to work to continue the rest of her day. That day, Virginia was put on drive-through duty, and not long into her day, she noticed a car that really resembled her missing car. Initially, she thought her mind was playing tricks on her, but as Virginia paid closer attention, she began to realize that the car she was looking at was actually hers. It had her license plate and her McDonald's visor that was still in the dashboard.
Oh, well, there it is.
By the time the car arrived at the drive-thru, there was no doubt in Virginia's mind that the vehicle she was looking at was hers. The woman inside it was 22-year-old Catherine York, and she came to order an ice cream and a couple of other meal combos. Now, Virginia actually told Catherine that the ice cream machine was faulty and that she should pull over at the other window while she fixed it. Catherine didn't think much of it, so she complied. And so while she waited, Virginia decided to call the police on her. And when they
Oh, WW strategy. He was like, no, you're not getting away. You gotta make it up. You gotta use the classic McDonald's line. Yeah, the ice cream machine is broken right now. Let me fix it for you. Just wait there. He was like, beep beep beep. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, we got her.
arrived, they arrested Kathy and also found clothes that she had stolen from a JCPenney and Sears store. And according to Virginia's manager, you would think whoever stole the car would say, I'm not going to go to a McDonald's because the owner works there. Now, the miracle car case was the end of the lighthearted cases, because from here on out, it is complete horror. As in the next and very similar case, Shanika Torres wasn't so lucky to escape her crash out.
Unloading a Glock semi-automatic 9 at the McDonald's because you didn't get bacon.
Bro, they need to ban guns in America, bro. This is insane. I'm gonna tell you a story right now, okay? I went to McDonald's, right? I went to like the Walmart McDonald's combination one. I ordered a junior chicken with the extra chicken patty, right? I got it. Well, I ate at the McDonald's. When I opened it, it was a junior chicken, but only with one patty. And you know what I did? I pulled out the Glock. No. Went back like a normal civilian, and I was like, hello, you forgot to add the patty. And the guy was like, my bad. He got it. Put the new patty in. Bam. Happy customer. Look at these guys. No bacon. And this man, semi-automatic. Pulled out the semi-automatic for no bacon. Y'all need to ban guns there, bro. You can't just immediately switch to, I'm gonna pull out my gun. I'm mad. You see me doing that? Imagine if I did that to you guys in my videos. Imagine if I was like, you don't subscribe right now, I'm gonna shoot you. That's a joke. It's a joke. YouTube is a joke. It's a joke. There's no threat. That's a joke. That's a joke. I did not mean any of that.
In February 2014, a Michigan woman named Shanika Torres drove to a McDonald's branch in the Grand Rapids area and placed an order for a bacon cheeseburger. But this single order resulted in a tragic incident that ruined her life forever. When Shanika's burger arrived, it was without any bacon, and this made her so furious that she immediately started a small scene in the restaurant. Now, upon hearing the noise outside, the manager of the restaurant came out to see what was going on, and eventually she managed to calm Shanika down. As compensation for her troubles, he offered to give Shanika a free meal, so she told her to come back in a couple of hours. So Shanika left the restaurant and waited until the time was up, and then she came back with a friend to get her burger. This time she decided to use the drive-thru. As her vehicle stopped at the window, Shanika explained to the waiter there that her order was messed up and that she was here to get compensated. The waiter went in, prepared the burger, and handed it to Shanika, but for some reason, they messed up her order again.
Oh no. Ain't no way. Yo, they're actually trolling her now. Bro, they're actually trolling her. They gave to her without bacon again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, Can't get fooled again.
forgetting to add bacon.
Driver handed me the bag, so I took the bag back and proceeded to walk away to let Table know that her order was wrong again.
Now Shanika was beyond furious. She'd used her voice the first time and they apparently didn't listen to her, so she decided to use something louder and much more dangerous.
Next thing you know, I just hear something pop.
Shanika reached for her purse and pulled out a 9mm Glock and shot at the drive-thru window.
Well, she did indeed fire that 9mm handgun after workers during 2 different stops at the same restaurant.
Thankfully, no one was injured, but she and her friend then immediately drove off. But unfortunately, they couldn't get very far, because only 30 minutes later, the police located them at Shanika's home, and so she was immediately placed under arrest and hit with several serious charges. Now, a couple of weeks later, Shanika was in court, fighting to stay out of prison. In her defense, Shanika's attorney argued that his client had no intention to harm and had mistakenly fired the gun, but no one
Mistakenly. You don't do this mistakenly. You don't point the gun at the window and pull the trigger by accident. Oh my days, bro. This attorney's cooked, bro. He's trying whatever to save her.
was actually buying any of that. And so after a brief trial, Shanika was found guilty of carrying and discharging a concealed weapon, and on April 21st was given a 7-year sentence to match. Shanika's crash out may have been unwarranted, but this next case, however, is even more disturbing since the victim was a small human.
An underage co-worker.
Oh hell nah.
And we've learned that suspect was already a registered sex offender.
Don't they do background check? I mean, I don't think they would do that at a McDonald's.
The first time Jakeem Jackson got arrested was in 2022. Jakeem was working as a contractor for a paratransit service in Broward County, Florida, when a paraplegic man in a wheelchair accused him of touching certain parts of him with
Paraplegic. You essayed a paraplegic. What's worse? Lakari? The streamer? If people know about him? Or this guy? Owning CSAM versus essaying a paraplegic man. Which one is worse, guys? Lakari or Jakeem?
without consent. Now, for privacy reasons, the details of his first case were never revealed to the public, but what we do know is that Jakeem would eventually plead no contest to lewd and inappropriate touching, but he wouldn't actually face any jail time. Instead, the court sentenced him to probation, but before his probation was actually over, Jakeem would commit a more serious offense that implicated both him and the business he worked for. It's June 4th, 2023. Jakeem is at the McDonald's located on Federal Highway. He was a shift manager at the restaurant, which meant that he had some level of authority over the other staff.
He was a manager? Oh no.
But instead of focusing on his job and staying out of trouble, Jakeem decided to do the exact opposite. Earlier that morning, the Hallandale Beach Police Department had received a call from one of Jakeem's female co-workers, who was a younger person, and for the sake of the story, we'll call her Alice. According to Alice's version of events, Jakeem had suddenly walked up to her to give her an unwanted hug, and continued to hold on to her while she tried to pull away from him. He then continued to approach her afterwards, and at one point would even touch certain parts over her clothing. A video of this incident recorded by Alice was shared with the Hallandale Beach Police, where Jackson could be seen repeatedly advancing towards her despite her shouting for him to leave her alone. However, this video was never released to the public. After identifying Jakeem, the officers then placed him under arrest and then transported him back to the Broward main jail, and it wouldn't take long for news of his arrest to begin to spread around the area. And in response, the owner/operator of the McDonald's location released a statement saying, "We're appalled by the unacceptable behavior of this former employee. Nothing is more important than the safety and well-being of our people, and my organization has no tolerance for harassment. Immediately after we learned about this incident, we terminated the employee and contacted the Hallandale Police Department. We've offered our full support to the victim and are cooperating with the police investigation." The franchise also claimed to have conducted a background check, but that was before Jakeem found himself on the offender registry, so his records actually came back clean. As of now, his case has gone completely silent, so it's not known whether he's been sentenced or his trial is still pending. But in this next case, we see what happens when innocent children have to grow up with very irresponsible and disgusting people.
This couple is accused of performing acts in a parked car outside a McDonald's in Connecticut.
Back in 2016, just around 9:30 p.m., the Orange Police Department received a distressing call from a McDonald's branch in the Boston Post Road area, and by the time they arrived, they had to record an unusual and very
Whoa, 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 what is this?
The unsettling crime. Some McDonald's employees had reported 28-year-old Kimberly Honorado and 27-year-old Rory Clark because the couple decided to pick the restaurant parking spot as the most comfortable place to do adult stuff. After picking up a meal from the food chain, they went into their car and decided that for some reason, this was the best place to get intimate, in the front seat. By the time the police arrived, Kimberly barely had any clothes on. Now all of this is already pretty freaky, but what transformed this crime from probably just lack of control to pure and profound evil was what the police found at the backseat of the vehicle. An awake, alert, and innocent small human at the back of the vehicle. He was forced to watch the scaring horror Kimberly and Rory had going.
Brother, this is so embarrassing. That's gross, number one. You just ruined his innocence as a child. You didn't need to see that. Is this their son, right? Like, who is the child? Now I'm even more concerned.
Now, according to the couple, they were just cuddling, but the witnesses confirmed
Just cuddling when she's literally naked.
otherwise. And so the two were charged with breach of space and damaging the morals of a younger individual, while the small human in the back was placed in the safe custody of a relative. But if you think this case is mind-blowing, this next person built a drug empire from a small fast food block.
She sold Happy Meals like this one for $82.
What the, huh?
$2 for the toy and $80
Oh my days.
for the inside.
Back in 2014, 26-year-old Shantia Dennis transformed her simple drive-thru role into one of the most artistic drug-dealing rings ever. Now, Shantia Dennis worked as the employee in charge of the drive-thru window at a McDonald's in Pittsburgh, but her salary as a McDonald's employee wasn't making ends meet, so she decided to sell one of the most dangerous hard substances with probably the most innocent packages in the franchise. Shantia began using the Happy Meal packs that were meant for kids to sell a particular hard substance that we're going to keep unnamed and just call it H for the sake of the video. Now, all Shantia's customer had to do was stop by the restaurant drive-thru and say the words, "I'd like to order a toy." And Shantia would then give whoever it was a classic Happy Meal pack, complete with a SpongeBob SquarePants figurine and an amount of H. While the normal Happy Meals cost $2 back then, Shantia charged 40 times extra for her substance edition. Now, with the help of a tip, the Pittsburgh District Attorney and Narcotics Enforcement went on an undercover mission and set up a fake buy. And as usual, Shantia heard the usual secret code, took the money and put it in her shirt. But not long after, she was arrested by the police. Now, she tried to deny all the claims, but the undercover officers had taken note of the serial numbers on the money they'd given to her, and it matched.
You selling in those Happy Meals?
No, I wasn't.
Dennis is the second McDonald's worker in 2 weeks to be arrested for allegedly selling on the job.
During the arrest, the police also found a different $80 on Shantia, which meant that she made a sale before they actually approached her. They also found an extra brick of H on her, which would have amounted to about 40 to 50 bags when broken down. And that wasn't the only case of substance sales in a McDonald's branch the same month in 2014. Just 2 weeks before Shantia's arrest, Theodore Upshaw was also conducting a similar H operation from the parking lot of a McDonald's. And just like Shantia, he was also exposed after an anonymous tip led to an undercover drug enforcement purchase.
Police caught Theodore Upshaw at the McDonald's in Murraysville.
Theodore might have been looking at a more severe sentence, as there was a series of overdose cases as a result of his laced H, but the authorities claimed that he wasn't responsible for it. Another McDonald's employee was arrested this month for selling H out of a restaurant in nearby Murraysville. Authorities said the H, recovered Wednesday, does not appear to be related to the laced H blamed for 22 overdose deaths in southwestern Pennsylvania. The entire H McDonald's case is insane, but this next case is so controversial, it lasted for half a decade.
What the hell?
Whose food was allegedly tampered with by a McDonald's employee Friday underwent medical examinations.
Glass.
Back in 2005, Albert Garcia Jr. was a regular 18-year-old high school senior who lived in the Bronx with his family. Albert played high school football and also worked part-time at McDonald's. Most people liked him, and his neighbors described Albert as a good kid. But there was one thing about Albert that stood out, and that was his hatred for the police. And this hatred would drive Albert to commit one of the most sickening crimes you could think of. On January 29, 2005, a police officer named John Florio ordered a number 1. That's a Big Mac, French fries, and soda from a McDonald's in Queens.
That's not a Big Mac. No, Junior Chicken and Nugget.
John picked up his order and walked a service dog down to Randall's Island to have his meal. But just as John took a bite off his burger, blood almost immediately poured out from his mouth. And when John looked at his burger, he saw broken glass pieces in it and immediately rushed to the Long Island Jewish Hospital for treatment. John suffered severe cuts to his mouth, including a broken tooth. And eventually, word ran around in the police department that Albert Garcia, who worked in the restaurant, was responsible for this. So they decided to make him pay. The police decided to start an undercover investigation. They sent another cop to get a burger from the same branch John got spiked at. And according to him, when Albert noticed he was a cop, he spat in the burger that served him. He was of course then arrested and charged with assault, reckless endangerment, and criminal possession of a weapon. As reports claim that he actually admitted to smashing a picture frame and then grinding the shards of glass and putting them into the hamburger. Albert said, "I put the little pieces of glass into the burger as a joke. I didn't know it was going to be sold to a cop." But that was just the first part of this case, because despite admitting to the crime on record, Albert actually refused to plead guilty and continued to contest the case even though everything seemed out of his reach. Florio, on the other hand, sued the company for $6 million for all the injuries he sustained as a result of eating the burger, but later actually settled for only $15,000. But 5 years later, the actual truth came to light. According to Albert's lawyer, the whole case was just a front for John Florio to get a large chunk of money from McDonald's from court settlements, and that there was no way to actually verify his story. And even after an x-ray on his throat, doctors couldn't find any evidence of cuts in his throat. After Albert's arrest in 2005, he was taken to the interrogation room and put under so much pressure that he had to admit to the accusations, even though he wasn't actually guilty. Albert described the interrogation techniques as though he was a dog, and even claimed that he admitted to putting the picture frame glass in the burger just so they would let him go. However, after forensic analysis, it was revealed that the glass in the burger wasn't actually the same as of any picture frame in the McDonald's. It was also revealed that a strand of hair found in the burger as evidence didn't actually match Albert's, and so Albert was declared not guilty, and in March of 2010, he was acquitted and awarded $437,000 in damage. And so the police officer did all of this just to try to get $15,000 from McDonald's.
Wow. That's crazy.
The entire story was insane, and according to Albert, he was just glad to be able to move on from the whole situation and live his normal life. He said, "Now that this is over, now I can live my life."
Guy's got $400,000. Of course he can live his life now. That's insane. He did all that just to lose, and now this guy won big time.
Albert Garcia might have been lucky, but we really can't say the same thing in our next case.
One Naples man is accused of stealing $1 worth of soda from a Florida McDonald's, and now he could face up to 5 years in prison if he is convicted of the charges.
Now, we've seen a lot of insane violent crimes on the list. This next one is probably the most unnecessary and dumbest jail case that you would ever come across, because back in 2012, Mark Bear went to jail simply because of $1 worth of soda. Mark Bear was from Naples, Florida, and to be honest, he wasn't the most law-abiding citizen in the area. He had run-ins with the law on several occasions and would consistently dodge serious punishments because most of his crimes were petty. But little did Mark know that when all of those petty crimes span his names and the records are summed, they form into much more serious penalties for him. So in April of 2012, Mark went to a McDonald's branch in Collier County of Florida and asked for a cup of water. But when the cup was given to Mark, he decided to actually fill his water cup with soda. Mark then took his illegal soda in front of the restaurant. But then the manager of the McDonald's, who was aware of what he'd done, came to Mark and gave him two options. It was either pay for the soda he stole, which would cost $1, or he would have to leave the premises right now. But Mark had a bonus option for the manager, and that was to be a total nuisance. He refused to leave and began cursing at the manager. And so the manager, of course, decided to call the cops. And this is where it gets interesting. By the time the police arrived, they realized they weren't dealing with a new offender. Mark was a repeat offender and was known as Red or Clown by the police department. And so they immediately arrested him. And by the time he got to court, he couldn't believe the judge's ruling. Mark was arrested and charged for petty theft because he stole soda worth $1. And according to the law, that's a misdemeanor. However, that wasn't Mark's first or second or third petty theft. So a simple misdemeanor turned into a felony. And in Florida, a third-degree felony, which was what Mark did, can result in a sentence of up to 5 years and a $5,000 fine, which meant that Mark wasn't going to get off easy. Now, fortunately for him, Mark was eventually released on a $6,500 bond and didn't actually face any jail time. But only a month later, he was reported to have been arrested again for trespassing at a Pizza Hut. And in this next case, we once again have an unsatisfied and ignorant customer.
Florida man is accused of attacking a McDonald's employee, reportedly over a straw.
I don't know what to say anymore. This is getting dumber and dumber.
On New Year's Eve of 2019, in St. Petersburg, Florida, 40-year-old Daniel Taylor was a little bit hungry, so he decided to walk into a Clearwater McDonald's branch around 7 p.m. Inside the restaurant, he met Jasmine James over the counter. Daniel made his order and waited a little bit, and everything seemed to be sailing smoothly, but not until his order actually came. Now, we don't know what exactly Daniel Taylor had paid for, but it included a drink or some liquid, and he expected it to come with a straw, as usual. But a month before, St. Petersburg City Council had actually banned single-use straws, which meant that restaurants could no longer display them and only gave it to customers that make direct requests. But Daniel wasn't actually aware of this new law and was pretty annoyed that he didn't see any straws around. So he got into an argument with Jasmine, blaming her for the lack of straws. Things got heated quickly, and Daniel then grabbed
Oh snap, this is the real video.
Jasmine by the collar. Now, Jasmine wasn't having any of this. She was almost half of Daniel's size, but had also been taking boxing classes, so she immediately began to punch Daniel in the face and head. Now, Jasmine's co-workers managed to save Daniel from her, and the branch's manager tried to settle things down. But according to an eyewitness, Daniel then went over to counter to fight the manager, and then assaulted another employee who apparently was in recovery from a C-section operation. Daniel then actually managed to escape just before the cops arrived, but moments later, they received a report of an unarmed robbery in a liquor store just 2 miles from the McDonald's branch. And when they arrived, it was again Daniel Taylor, and they immediately, of course, took him to custody. Now, it was revealed that he was actually homeless and had been intoxicated all the way through the night, and so Daniel was arrested on 2 charges of battery and was sentenced to 60 days in prison. But since he'd already served 58 days, the judge ordered Daniel to pay $1,000 on fines or perform nearly 120 hours of community service. Jasmine, on the other hand, was given paid leave, but instead of returning, she actually sued McDonald's, claiming that she had to call 911 by herself when the incident had occurred, and that the employees weren't actually trained for situations like this. But unfortunately, there's no public information whether Jasmine received any money from McDonald's or not. Now, Daniel Taylor's arrest might have been disturbing. What comes next, however, is even more unsettling, since the crime could have been prevented if the police actually just did their job.
At least 10 times a day I have the flashbacks of what had happened that morning. It can happen at any time, any given day to anybody.
Stabbing spree.
On December 27, 2023, a 30-year-old man named Percy Woody carried out one of the most disturbing killing sprees in Charleston, West Virginia, and it all started from the small McDonald's branch where he made a living. Percy Rashawn Woody wasn't a stranger to a life of crime. On numerous occasions, he'd faced problems with law enforcement agents and was frequently in and out from jail for one crime or the other. His first recorded arrest was in January 2018, when officers were called to the scene of a violent incident on the 1300 block of Renaissance Circle in Charleston. Percy was said to have gotten into a verbal argument with a man named Aunton Clanton, and while there's no information about what triggered the fight, Percy would escalate the situation by pulling out a weapon and stabbing Aunton 5 times. Once police arrived, Percy was taken into custody and would later be charged with felony malicious wounding, and he would later enter a guilty plea in September of 2018 and was sentenced to 1 year of probation. But being on probation didn't stop Percy from committing even more crimes, because on August 17, 2019, Percy would again be arrested for slashing another victim's face with a box cutter. His probation, of course, was immediately revoked, and he would end up staying in jail until September of 2020, when he would plead guilty to violating his probation and malicious wounding again. This time, Percy was sentenced to 1 to 3 years in prison with credits for time served. Now, by 2022, Percy was released from prison, but it wouldn't take long before he would get in trouble once again. On April 25th, police were called to a discount clothing store in Mercer County after Percy started harassing customers and refused to leave. But even after the officers arrived, Percy still wouldn't cooperate. Instead, he got extremely violent, repeatedly trying to stab an officer in the leg with a box cutter, and even attempting to grab another officer's gun. He would later be apprehended and charged with attempting to disarm a police officer, battery on a law enforcement officer, and obstruction. And about a month later, he then pleaded guilty to attempting to commit a felony and battery on a police officer. He would eventually be sentenced once again to 1 to 3 years in prison for the attempted felony and 1 year for the battery. The sentences were ordered to be served concurrently, and he received credit for the 224 days he'd already spent in jail. But on October 31st, 2023, Percy would again be released from prison. Still violent, still not rehabilitated. Now, in an attempt to integrate back into society, Percy would get a job at a McDonald's branch on McCorkle Avenue. However, Woody's employer didn't know about his violent nature because he wasn't from around that area. Now, Percy had this very weird habit of having sharp objects on him, and the next time he would use one of them, the bloodshed that followed was staggering. On that fateful day in December 2023, Woody was in charge of the drive-thru, and during his shift, he got into an argument with one of his co-workers, and things got so heated that he put the co-worker in a chokehold. Another co-worker, Kristen Miller, then tried to de-escalate the situation, but on that day, Woody also had his box cutter on him, and so he pulled that out and slashed her in the neck. He then stabbed the other co-worker that he had in a chokehold in the face. And this is what Kristen Miller had to say about this.
I could feel something dripping down my neck, and I go and I grab and realize that he got me. He's practically slit my throat. At first, it was such a fast-paced thing that happened. I didn't even realize what had happened.
Woody then tried to escape, and on his way, he cut a customer who just walked into the restaurant with his box cutter. He then took the streets and went towards Roosevelt Avenue. It was a residential area, and a woman was taking out her trash in front of her home. And when Woody saw her, he decided to attack her with his weapon too. Still dressed in his McDonald's uniform, he beat her up and cut her and then continued his escape.
The terrifying wake-up call for neighbors like Jeff and Jennifer Wright, who received an unexpected knock on their door.
You know, you're half asleep, you're just waking up, and you don't expect to find your neighbor at your door covered in blood.
By this time, the police had already been alerted, and a chase was already on. And when Woody realized that the cops were closing in on him, he did something very unexpected, which just further proves how unstable he was. He turned a box cutter on himself and tried...
I was just about to say, He's one of those.
To check himself out of this world. However, the officers were quick to stop him before it was too late, and he was then hospitalized. Luckily, none of his victims suffered life-threatening wounds and were all rushed to the hospital for treatment. Woody would end up facing 4 counts of malicious wounding and 1 count of obstruction. Numerous lawsuits were also filed against McDonald's, forcing the company to release a statement saying, "We are shocked and saddened by the violent attack that took place at our restaurant this morning. Nothing is more important than the safety of our employees and customers. Right now, we're focused on supporting our people with time off and counseling services and assisting law enforcement." Despite everything, Percy Woody would never face trial, because on October 2nd, 2024, he was found unresponsive in his jail cell in the South Central Regional Jail at the age of 38. His cause of death remains unknown. Percy almost turned into a sick, cold killer. But this next case is even more unsettling, since it involves a McDonald's employee who tried to escape from the law.
So, I'll show you a picture of the knife. The photograph I'll call Exhibit RF3.
That is blunt.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about different one. That is blunt and that is a toy. If you look at it, that's not sharp at all.
Okay. It doesn't look like a toy to me.
In the spring of 2022, a 16-year-old guy named Jonathan Cox was at a house party in Surrey, alongside his friends and other teenagers from the neighboring towns. But in the middle of the party, some of the teenagers got into a verbal disagreement with each other, and soon they were throwing hands. Jonathan and his friends would come to the party from the town of Camberley were at the center of this fight, and they would end up getting a beatdown by their rivals from the town of Aldershot. Most of them walked away with minor injuries that day, but while they moved on once the fight was over, Jonathan held onto the anger and embarrassment, specifically towards another teenager named Kyle Wright. And for the next few weeks, Jonathan's anger just kept building up as he slowly waited for the day when he would get his revenge. But that day was closer than he thought it would be, because just weeks after the fight, Jonathan was informed about another house party, this time in his hometown. He knew that the other teens from Aldershot couldn't say no to a party, and after asking around for a bit, he finally got confirmation that Kyle and his friends were going to be there. And for Jonathan, this was the opportunity he'd been waiting for to get his lick back, and he wasn't going to let it slide. And so on May 27th, 2022, Kyle dressed up and got ready for the party. He wasn't really invited, but planned to attend anyway. He then packed his backpack and got out of the house and hopped on his bike. Now back at the party, Kyle was busy having fun, unaware that Jonathan was on his way to ruin the night. CCTV footage from a home close to where the party was being held caught Kyle and his friends stepping out of the venue on Green Hill Road, close to the junction with Copt Hall Drive, at around 10 PM, laughing and talking among themselves. They stay outside for about 50 minutes before heading back in. Now Jonathan was already in the neighborhood at this point. Another CCTV camera in the area showed him getting down from his bike and securing it to a lamppost before continuing the rest of his journey on foot. Shortly afterwards, doorbell camera footage from the house from earlier showed Jonathan lurking outside the party venue. And then came Kyle and his friends. Once Jonathan noticed they were outside, he walked straight towards them, and you could see them getting into a verbal altercation right away. But suddenly, Jonathan reached into his bag and pulled out a machete, and before anyone could stop him, he stabbed Kyle in the chest. Severely injured and now bleeding badly, Kyle then tried to run from the scene, moving away from the view of the CCTV, but unfortunately, he wouldn't go too far before falling to the ground and passing out. Once he realized that his mission was accomplished, Jonathan then ran away from the scene, while Kyle's friend tried to get him help. They called for emergency services in an attempt to save Kyle's life before it was too late, but despite the best efforts of the paramedics, Kyle was pronounced dead at the scene. Now around the same time, a police officer responding to the incident would notice Jonathan riding his bike erratically away from the scene of the crime, and without even knowing that he was the perpetrator, something just felt suspicious about him, which led the officer to turn his patrol car around in an attempt to chase him. But Jonathan already saw the officer coming and quickly vanished before he could be caught. He went straight home and got to work destroying every piece of evidence linking him to the incident. In footage captured by the CCTV in his neighborhood, Jonathan could be seen exiting his house while carrying a bag, and by the time he returned, the bag was gone. The next day, Jonathan was also seen carrying a bunch of items from his home and heading in the same direction he went the previous night. This would go on for a few more times, with Jonathan moving out of the house with a bag or some items and then returning empty-handed. He would also get rid of the bicycle altogether, since it could easily lead the officers to him. Now by this point, news of Kyle's death had spread across the area, and Jonathan knew that the police were searching for whoever was responsible for his killing. But Jonathan was confident that they wouldn't find him, and for a while he was actually right, because by the time the police brought in their first suspect, it wasn't actually Jonathan. Instead, they went ahead to arrest an innocent individual who supposedly fit the profile of the suspect they were searching for. But just because the police made a mistake at first didn't mean that Jonathan was going to get away with this horrific crime. As soon as the investigators started to examine the CCTV footage, something odd began to stand out about the suspect. He was significantly shorter than Kyle and his friends, which was weird because the suspect they had in custody was either the same height or taller than the victim. And this was when they realized that they had gotten the wrong guy. And after releasing the innocent person, the investigators went back to work on finding out who the real person in the footage was. And so they decided to finally speak with one of Kyle's friends, who gave them a description of the person he saw that night. But still, that wouldn't narrow down their search, as the friend didn't know who exactly Jonathan was. What they stated, they got a tip from an unidentified source, identifying Jonathan as the perpetrator of the attack. And to determine whether this tip was credible or not, the officers looked into Jonathan's criminal history history, only to find out that he'd actually had a prior issue with the law concerning a knife-related charge. Now, the details of this incident were made public, but for the police, finding this information was a breakthrough for the case. And so within a matter of hours, officers set out to locate Jonathan and bring him in for questioning. And they would find him, of course, working at a McDonald's in Camberley. Now, when the officers approached him, Jonathan completely freaked out, and upon hearing the charges he was being arrested for, Jonathan denied it, saying that he didn't have anything to do with Kyle's death. And Jonathan's behavior would become so erratic that the arresting officer would repeatedly ask him to calm down. But in his attempt to convince the officers that he wasn't the guy they were looking for, Jonathan would mention that he thought the officers already had a suspect in custody, which was strange since the officers never mentioned the name of the suspect he was being accused of killing. Now, once he was placed under arrest,
this guy just outed himself.
the officers then headed to his home, and inside they found several knives and machetes, but none of them actually matched the weapon used in killing Kyle. As a matter of fact, the officers couldn't actually locate any actual physical evidence tying Jonathan to the incident. It almost looked like Jonathan was going to get away with it, until they actually checked his phone. And this is when they found a text message he exchanged with an unnamed friend days after the incident, where he talked about how he was scared of going to prison.
Yes, I didn't even mean to do this, I can't lie. I'm so paranoid, I need to burn everything and get rid of my bike for real. Everything is stashed in the forest, I bleached it, but not the handle. And my bike is locked up on another road. I'm so paranoid, man. I don't want to go to prison.
Suddenly, all the strange trips Jonathan was taking in the days after the incident started to make sense. Turns out he was actually moving all the evidence into a nearby woodland, where he then either burned them or got rid of them some other way. Unfortunately, neither the knife nor the bloodstained clothes Jonathan wore that day were ever found. But using the text and the CCTV footage, the officers believed that they had a very strong case against Jonathan. But for some reason, he actually still believed he could escape from the consequences, because upon arrival at the police station, Jonathan would write a statement, which would then be read by his lawyer. Jonathan made it clear that he wasn't going to answer any questions from the officers, but that didn't actually stop them from trying to get a confession out of him. But with every question, Jonathan simply replied with
no comments.
However, he couldn't keep that up for too long, because when the investigators brought out a picture of the machetes seized from his home, Jonathan spoke up. The officers then asked him why he collects those kinds of weapons and what he intends to do with them, but Jonathan still wasn't ready to cooperate. Instead, he told the officers that the machete was actually a toy. Jonathan would then present his alibi, telling the officers that he was out selling illicit substances on the day of the crime, so there's no way he could have been responsible for Kyle's death. But that defense would fall flat when the case reached the courtroom. Because of the CCTV footage, the text, and other evidence collected during the investigation, Jonathan's trial only lasted 14 days. And on December 12, 2022, the jury at Guildford Crown Court returned an unanimous verdict, declaring Jonathan guilty of first-degree murder. His sentencing was scheduled for December 15th, and on that day, the senior investigating officer, Detective Chief Inspector Simon Dunn, from the Surrey and Sussex Major Crime Team, would read out a statement, revealing how he and his officers managed to solve the case without any physical evidence.
First and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Kyle Wright. No one should ever have to endure the loss they've suffered. As soon as the murder investigation was launched, the team worked tirelessly to find the person responsible for Kyle's death. This included going through hours of CCTV footage, obtaining witness accounts in difficult circumstances, and plowing through mobile phone analysis to find the evidence. The painstaking work was pivotal in securing a conviction. Cox's motive for targeting Kyle appears to have come from a minor feud between separate groups of young people from neighboring towns. Cox went to the scene armed with a knife that night, with the intention of causing him serious harm. Unfortunately, this has resulted in the tragic and senseless death of a teenage boy with his whole life ahead of him.
Jonathan would then be sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. For Jonathan, this was the beginning of his punishment, but Kyle's parents now had to live with the pain of their son's death forever. And in the words of Kyle's mother,
he was a beloved, sweet, gentle son who wouldn't even hurt a fly. Every second without him is pure torture. Our hearts have been shattered into a million pieces. He was such a talented and dedicated basketball player and keen gym enthusiast. A parent should not have to bury her child. No child deserves this. Myself, your dad, your brother, family, friends, and the community are devastated.
What comes next, however, is the perfect...
That's just sad. And this is why you don't go to those high school frat or college frat parties, because especially if this is like rival gangs intertwine. They see each other at the party and then one person's too drunk and then they get mad and then it escalates and then someone dies. That's why you don't go to those parties, because stuff like this can happen.
Example of what happens when an argument goes too far.
I need to see my baby. Okay, so right now it's a homicide investigation. Your child is unfortunately deceased, so she's considered a victim.
Getting a customer's order wrong at a McDonald's isn't an uncommon occurrence, but sometimes a mistake as simple as this can lead to a major tragic event, and nobody understands this better than the employee at the McDonald's located in Atlanta. It was around 2:45 p.m. on December 28, 2023, when the police received a chilling call from the business location concerning a violent confrontation between an employee and a customer. But by the time the officers arrived on the scene, things had already gotten out of control. Inside the restaurant, they found an employee named Tamanika Woods lying in a pool of her own blood. She was immediately taken to the Grady Memorial Hospital for emergency treatment, but while the doctors attempted to save her life, her condition had become too critical and she was declared dead not long after arriving at the hospital. Confused as to who could have been responsible for the attack on Tamanika, the officers began speaking to the witnesses present at the scene, who informed them that Tamanika had actually gotten into a verbal altercation with a group of customers, later identified as sisters Tania, Marlo, and Abel Evans. But in the middle of the scuffle that followed, Tania would pull out a gun and fire at Tamanika, ending her life instantly. But there were still so many holes in the story, so the officers decided to check the CCTV footage to understand how the whole thing started. Once the officers watched how the incident unfolded on the CCTV, they placed the three sisters under arrest and transported them back to the police station. And back at the station, investigators began working on establishing a timeline of events and reconstructing what really happened inside the McDonald's. So in order to get a full perspective on the incident, they separated the three into different interview rooms. And so the questioning began. The first sister to be interrogated was Mallow. To begin with, the officers collected all her information, including her age and address. And once that was done, they asked her to recount the events that led to the shooting. And that was when the story began to make sense. Mallow then explained that after they placed their order, the employees informed them that they were short-staffed, so they had to process the order together instead of handling them separately. However, after receiving their orders at the drive-thru, Mallow and her sisters discovered that it wasn't complete, and that was when things started to go south. To sort out the issue, the sisters decided to speak to one of the staff at the window, and upon learning about the error, the staff then apologized and promised to rectify it immediately. At this point, Mallow and her sisters left the drive-thru and headed into the restaurant so they could properly monitor their order. But according to Mallow, as soon as they entered, they could hear one of their employees in the back talking about them in a disrespectful manner. And within a matter of minutes, what started as a simple misunderstanding over an incomplete order had escalated into a verbal argument. Mallow, in her own version of events, claimed that Tamanika had kept trying to antagonize them and get under their skin so they could react. And although it's hard to verify if Tamanika actually threatened to shoot them first or not, since she unfortunately isn't around to tell her own side of the story, Mallow claimed that she kept lashing out at them and even went ahead to put her hands on Abel. And so of course they decided to pull out a gun. Now as soon as Tamanika was struck, Mallow claimed that she and her sisters immediately tried to escape, but a male customer had interfered in the situation at that point and was holding a gun to Tania's head instead. So now with her sister in danger of being shot, she couldn't leave until the police eventually arrived. Now Mallow's story contained details that could change the trajectory of the case and introduce some elements of self-defense. But just to be sure that she wasn't making things up, another officer was assigned to speak to Abel, and what she revealed was even more unsettling. Just like with Mallow's story, Abel also confirmed that their order was initially incomplete, but she would also claim that Tamanika actually had a gun, which she threatened to shoot them with. Now surprisingly, even Abel didn't initially know that it was Tania who fired the shot, because according to her, she wasn't aware that Tania even brought a gun along to the restaurant. Now a few hours after they were taken into custody, Mallow and Abel would be released to go home, since they weren't actually the ones who pulled the trigger. Tania, on the other hand, would be moved to a special interrogation room where two investigators would attempt to get her to confess to her crime. However, Tania wasn't as cooperative as her sisters. As investigators Francis and McAllen walked into the interview room that day, they believed they were about to hear the first-person account of the incident. They started by reading Tania her Miranda rights, informing her that she could legally refuse to talk to them and instead request a lawyer. And Tania took that option. She told the officers that she decided to invoke her rights to remain silent, and she then asked to speak to her mom in order to begin the process of finding a good lawyer to represent her. Now, the identity of Tania's mother was never released to the public, but for the sake of the story, we'll call her Mary. The investigators had no choice but to respect her wishes and move out of the room to give Tania time to talk to her mother. And the conversation that ensued is nothing short of disturbing.
Tania, we've been waiting on you to call. Oh, please help me. I need a lawyer or something. Okay, so listen. Do not don't write no statements. We've been talking to lawyers already. Don't talk about it over the phone. You are going to be okay. Milo and Apple are home. I want to come home. I know you do. You just got to calm down and stop crying. Did you write a statement? No. I said I didn't want to talk. Yeah, that's good. Keep it like that.
All of the emotions Tania had been bottling inside of her heart would come rushing out once she'd heard Mary's voice, but listening to her mother talk would immediately explain how Tania became a cold-blooded killer. Instead of condemning her daughter's actions and showing some sort of empathy for the victim who lost her life, Mary was more concerned about rescuing her daughter out of legal trouble she'd gotten herself into. But judging by the next thing Tania said, it was obvious that Tania still didn't know how much trouble she was actually in. With tears in her eyes, Tania told Mary about how she refused to talk to the cops, and Mary then continued to reassure her that her lawyer would be visiting the jail to talk to her the next day. And Marie then asked her what charges had been filed against her, and once she started to list them, it became obvious that she wasn't going to be leaving the jail anytime soon. Now, the day after the incident, Tania would appear before a county superior court judge to find out if she would be getting released on bond while the trial was pending. But not surprisingly, her bond was denied. Now, unfortunately, from this point on, the case would become shrouded in mystery, because while some sources claim that she was eventually sentenced to 20 years for the manslaughter charge and 5 years for the firearms charge, there's no official source confirming whether this information is actually true or not. But realistically, it can be concluded that she definitely was sentenced to at least a couple of years for her crimes. but it's not as sick as stabbing your
She better. Why didn't they ask like the workers? Or like the workers could have said something about what happened, no? This is wild, bro. They really need to ban guns. People should not have rights to own firearms in America.
boss over 13 times.
What about now? Do you feel any more literally? I feel better.
Now I'm pretty sure a lot of us have had our own share of bad work experiences, and in most situations the most effective solution is to try and switch jobs. But on July 10th, 2025, when a McDonald's employee faced a very similar situation, she decided to take a route that she would never come back from. Afeni Muhammad was a 26-year-old employee at a McDonald's branch on 9 Mile Road in East Point, Michigan. On the 8th of July, she posted a very lengthy rant, which was basically just her complaining about her manager at work.
I got sent home early yesterday. I got sent home early today by the same person. I'm telling you, she's a bully. This isn't funny. She could keep being a bully if she wants to, but that is going to catch up to her.
Now the manager in question was 39-year-old Jennifer Harris, a single mother of 6 who'd worked at the McDonald's branch for 15 years and rose all the way up from a normal fry cook to the position of a manager. Because of how much she'd invested in her career, Jennifer was a pretty strict boss and expected the same work ethic that she had from others. 2 days after posting the rant, Afeni returned to work, and very shortly after clocking in, at around 7 in the morning, she and Jennifer got into another argument. Now Afeni was furious, and as she drove back to her apartment, something in her snapped. She turned the car around and headed to a nearby park, and it was there that she would make up her mind to go back to her workplace and get her lick back once and for all. At 7:55 AM, Afeni walked into the restaurant with a hooded mask and a French knife. She went to the back where Jennifer was and pulled out the knife and stabbed her about 15 times. According to the assistant prosecutor on her case,
she produced a weapon that was a knife longer than 3 inches, and she stabbed the victim multiple times, up to possibly as many as 15 times, eventually causing her death.
She then tried to escape, but on her way, a customer later identified as Devontae Pace, who was waiting for his order, noticed the blood all over Afeni. Devontae tried to stop her, but she started running. And that was when Devontae, who was a legal concealed carrier, pulled out his gun and fired shots up in the air to scare Afeni. But despite that, she still didn't stop. He then chased after her, and as soon as he caught up with her, he held her down at gunpoint, preventing her from escaping until East Point police arrived. Unfortunately, by the time the paramedics got to the scene, Jennifer had already lost way too much blood. They attempted to render first aid before transporting her to the hospital, but it was too late. Not long after she arrived at the hospital, Jennifer passed away. Afeni was immediately arrested and taken in for questioning, and once inside the interrogation room, the officers read Afeni her Miranda rights, but she actually decided to waive any form of restriction she was entitled to. Instead, she would begin speaking freely to the cops about the motive behind the attack. And just like in her rant video, Afeni would accuse Jennifer of being a bully and a racist, saying that she would often use her position to oppress and take advantage of the rest of the staff. However, when asked to provide any example of any racist statement Jennifer made towards her or anyone else, Afeni couldn't provide a straight answer. Afeni also claimed that she wasn't the only victim of Jennifer's bullying and maltreatment. And at some point during the video, you can actually see her demonstrating the killing motion to the officers questioning her, pointing out all the spots where she stabbed Jennifer. But the most unsettling part of this interrogation was when the officers asked her how she felt while attacking Jennifer.
Oh, she's gonna be like, you sound good.
Instead of being remorseful or apologetic, Afeni actually appeared excited. She told the officers that she felt free because she believed that she was fighting for her rights and trying to free herself from oppression. The officers then pressed further, asking her if she felt any form of remorse for what she had done. And in response, Afeni told the investigators that she was happy that Jennifer was dead. And as creepy as this may sound, it's not really surprising, since this wasn't actually the first time she would attack a person with a knife. Earlier in 2022, Afeni was arrested for stabbing her boyfriend in Alexandria, Virginia, during an argument. She was arrested at the time, but would end up receiving a suspended prison sentence and a year of probation. As for the Jennifer case, since Afeni confessed to committing the crime, moving the case was easy. During the court hearing that followed, the CCTV footage of the murder was played in full, and it was so disturbing that Jennifer's daughter, who was also present in the courtroom, left for a while, only to return with a knife in an attempt to stab Afeni right there in court. But just before
crazy.
Before she could get any closer to Afeni, the police tackled her and barred Jennifer's family from the courtroom for the remainder of the hearing. At first, Afeni's lawyers tried to argue that she was incompetent to stand trial on the basis of mental instability, and judging by her social media, there was clearly something up with her. She seemed to have been dealing with personality disorders, and would often make posts about how she wasn't being accepted for who she was. Afeni was also a rapper, and even had a music video titled "Accept Me for Who I Am." But the court, however, considered her competent to stand trial, and as of right now, she's currently facing charges of first-degree murder and carrying a dangerous weapon with unlawful intent. But at this point, the final judgment hasn't been passed yet, but judging by all indications, Afeni would probably be spending the rest of her life behind steel bars. Now this next case is by far the worst one that happened at a McDonald's.
You're viewing the body of a male Mexican, approximately years old.
Till date is one of the most grueling fast food shootings in American history, and it all started from a case of purely managed mental health. James Oliver Huberty, the man behind the infamous incident, was born in Canton, Ohio on October 11.
Ohio's not beating the allegations. This is generational. 1942. It's not a meme. It's just facts.
7th, 1942. When he was 3, he contracted polio, and the disease ultimately altered his life. He was forced to walk with a limp and had to use leg braces all his life. Dealing with this type of condition made it hard for him to have any friends at all, and also made him a target for bullies. In 1950, when James was only 8, his father announced that he was moving the family to a farm he just purchased in the Pennsylvania Amish countryside. His mother, however, wasn't willing to completely abandon her present lifestyle to move to the rural area, so instead she decided to leave. Getting abandoned by his mother left young James devastated, and while he did learn to live without her, all the pain and trouble that he grew up in didn't just disappear. As James grew older, he became sadistic and absolutely hated humans. He would later go on to obtain a degree in sociology and would get a job as an embalmer afterwards. During James's time as an embalmer, he developed schizophrenia and would often hear voices of dead people, but he would actually end up getting fired after his boss noticed that he had almost zero emotions and would show no sympathy to families of the dead. After losing his job, he then moved to Ohio to work as a welder. He also got married to a woman named Edna, with whom he had 2 daughters. Nothing was extraordinarily good with James, but at least everything was normal at the time. Until 1982, when tragedy struck. It was in that year that James was fired again by the new company he was working for, and because of this his family had to move away, and so they decided to settle in San Ysidro, where James got a job as a security guard. But by this time his mental health was long gone. He was distant and hot-tempered, and he would often maltreat his wife and children, slapping them and holding them at knife point. In addition to being violent, James also held several extremist views, especially when it concerned immigration. However, in the middle of this downward spiral, James would suddenly decide to turn his life around and take control of his deteriorating mental health. And when he told his wife about this decision, she advised him to seek professional help. And so 2 days later, on July 17th, 1984, he called a San Diego mental health clinic to book an appointment. The receptionist that responded to James claimed that he didn't sound troubled or in distress, so following protocol, she didn't record his case as an emergency situation and recorded his name to receive consultation after 48 hours. But unknown to both James Huberty and the receptionist, she'd misspelled his last name as Schuberty, which resulted in the entire conversation being lost in the system. Now it might have seemed like a simple bureaucratic error, but that same mistake would cost 21 innocent lives. July 18th, 1984. On the morning of the massacre, James started the day by settling a minor parking ticket. He then took his family to the San Diego Zoo, and after spending time together, they went for lunch at a McDonald's. But this one wasn't actually the one he attacked. This branch was located in Claremont, and according to Edna, James seemed to have been finding happiness, and the family's time together was peaceful. But by the time they got back home, he turned even colder, and this time said something she'd never expected. Immediately when James got back home, he began arming himself. He picked up a pump-action shotgun, a semi-automatic pistol, and an Uzi, with ammunition that could last for weeks, and then wrapped everything up in a cloth bag. He then went to his bedroom where Edna was and said, "I want to kiss you goodbye." Edna, who was preparing dinner, asked where he was going, and with absolutely zero emotion on his face, he replied, "I'm going hunting for humans." On his way out of the apartment, he then said to his daughters, "Bye, I will not be coming back." James then drove from his home and stopped at a Black Bear diner at first, but after a couple of minutes later, he changed his target to a McDonald's not very far away. When James arrived, the McDonald's was absolutely packed. He walked up to the counter and pulled out his shotgun and aimed it at his 16-year-old employee. And when this happened, the assistant manager simply said, "Hey John, that guy is going to shoot you." But before John knew, James had pulled the trigger. However, when he did, nothing actually happened. The shotgun had jammed, and at that point, John and the assistant manager thought it was a prank, a sick one.
You mean a prank? He just... Did he not just kill the first person? He first aimed it. Oh, he didn't shoot it.
Gun and aimed it at a 16-year-old employee. And when this happened, the assistant manager simply said,
"Hey John, that guy is going to shoot you."
But before John knew, James had pulled the trigger. However, when he did, nothing actually happened. The shotgun had jammed, and at that point, John and the assistant manager thought it was a prank. A sick one though, so they decided to call the manager nonetheless. James quietly inspected his shotgun, with the coldest and most inexpressive of looks on his face. The manager, Neva Kane, came out from the kitchen, and just as she was about to ask James to leave, he pulled out his Uzi, shot at the ceiling, and sprayed bullets in Neva's face. The restaurant immediately went into chaos, and so did James. He walked around spraying bullets while screaming,
"Dirty swine, Vietnam ass," and that he killed 1,000 and was willing to kill 1,000 more.
The details of the massacre are sickening and sadistic to even read out. James shot at families that tried to hide under the tables, and that were trying to be protected by older people. His victim range was between 4 months and 74 years old. When the attack started, one customer, Victor Rivera, tried to talk sense into James, but this quickly irritated him, so he shot him 14 times, while screaming that he should shut up. All of this began at 3:56 p.m, but it wasn't until 4 minutes later that the first emergency call was made. A staff member who was hiding managed to reach a call operator on a mobile phone, and told her to call 911 about the incident. The operator then asked her to do it herself, but she explained that she...
Are you serious? You gotta be kidding me.
couldn't, else James would shoot her. The operator agreed, but then gave the police the wrong McDonald's address.
It's a disaster.
And sent them to a different branch about 2 miles from the crime scene. Because of this, James had more time to continue the massacre, and at the same time, people outside weren't aware of the horror that was going on in the McDonald's. During this period, James also managed to kill 4 people outside the restaurant, including 2 11-year-old boys and 74-year-old Miguel Victoria Ulua and 69-year-old Ida Victoria. About 10 minutes after the first call, the police finally arrived at the scene, but James didn't make it any easier for the officers. He opened fire immediately and continued shooting inside the restaurant, plus the shattered glass on the window made it difficult for them to see through. According to the hostages, when the police arrived, James turned a radio to the news channel to follow up on what was going on outside, but after a while he got bored, so he decided to turn the radio to a music channel and started dancing. Now a fire truck tried to drive close to the scene to try to put out the burning kitchen, but immediately James sighted the truck and opened fire and injured one of the drivers instead. Now the massacre and hostage situation went on for 77 minutes.
This is brutal. Oh my, this guy's treating it like it's freaking GTA or something.
But at 5:17 p.m, Chuck Foster, a SWAT sniper from the San Diego Police Department, managed to get a clear sight of James from a rooftop position of a post office across the street. He didn't hesitate and immediately shot James in the chest, and almost instantly James' hour of horror ended. In an interview many years later, Foster described his shot.
He had his Uzi with him. I was trying to get a good beat on him. I waited until he paused next to one of the bodies on the floor.
The aftermath was devastating. Multiple ambulances crowded in front of the McDonald's to rescue as many lives as they could, and at the same time the fire department was trying to put out the fire in the restaurant. On that day, James ended 21 lives and left so many others injured. This massacre immediately took over the headlines and gained a lot of sympathy from the public. Even Burger King, the franchise's biggest competitors, suspended their ads in solidarity, and a lot of contributions were made. And after that, the McDonald's was completely demolished.
I mean, that's valid. That's just cursed, bro. That McDonald's is just cursed. You just break it down.
As a way to erase the horror from the minds of the residents of that area.
That's insane. That is the worst of the worst. Actual massacre that caused them to just demolish the McDonald's. That's crazy. What did we learn, guys? We learned Ohio is not a safe place. It never was. Generational. I don't even know what the word to describe Ohio now. Never in my life. I'm never going there. If anyone says we have to go there, I'm gonna be like, nope. My life is more important than going to Ohio. You got me. effed up if you think I'm going to Ohio after reading any of the, I could go to like a McDonald's in Ohio and just die for no reason. I could go to America and go to a McDonald's and just die for no reason. For just being there, I could just die. That's what it's just showing me. I could just peacefully be eating at a McDonald's and then altercation happens and then shots fired. My life is in danger, I could die. Insanity, bro. They really need to remove that rights, bro. I don't care. Y'all don't need a right to own a firearm there. Because this is ridiculous. Good thing I'm in Canada, bro. In my whole life living in Canada, I've rarely seen altercations happen at a McDonald's or like any fast food place. I've seen like maybe people yell, but that's it. This, I've never seen a fight though. Unless I feel like if you go to like downtown Toronto, that's probably where it would happen. But like in where I'm at, I've never seen violence like what was shown in this video. No gun, no knife, no punching, just yelling maybe, that's about it. People just yell. Like when I used to work at Walmart, it was a Walmart and McDonald's, I've only seen people like complain how slow their order was coming. That's like the only time. And like the order being wrong, but they just get mad and yell. And it'd be like a Karen being like, I'm gonna call the head office. Who's your manager? Blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, there was one time I just felt bad for the people working there because they were understaffed, and like it was really one guy making the burgers too, and I just felt so bad. And that guy messed up my order, and I didn't complain. Like I'm pretty sure that guy was so stressed by himself making all the burgers, because this is never in my life that have I experienced this. But he made me a Big Mac, and he forgot to put the top bun. When I opened the Big Mac, there was no bun. It was just the patty, and I was like, what the heck? I still ate it. I didn't even want to complain to that guy. He was already getting shit on by like every customer, that I was like, you know what? I would just eat it. I just ate it. I did not want. Bro, he was under so much stress, and even if I did go, I would probably have to wait. Actually, no, I probably wouldn't wait. You just have to get the bun and put it on the burger. I just felt bad for that dude, bro. I was just like, I'm gonna just eat the burger without the bun. It's okay. But yeah. Sometimes I'm saying you just gotta be nice to the employees too, man. Be nice to them too. You know? Be understanding. Some people aren't like that. They're just like, you made my order wrong. You stupid. You trash. That's why you working at McDonald's, because you can't even make some messed up rude things. But like me, I'm not like that. I'm just like, yo, it's okay. Take your time. Like, I want quality. I don't need speed. Okay? You just gotta make it properly, and I can enjoy it, you know? You don't need to make it fast and then mess it up. You make it, take your time, bam, bam, bam. Give me my order properly, that's fine. You go hyper speed and then it's like messed up, then it's like, come on, man. Anyways, that was a crazy video from Yapmaster. That was definitely disturbing. Prime, so give the video a like. Shout out Yapmaster. W Man's W video. Make sure to subscribe to him and like his videos. This guy in the comments talking about a bucket of nuggets, that's what I said. Okay, this person, I'm at a McDonald's to eat, not here to see someone get clapped in front. That's what I'm saying. That's why I don't even want to go to America now. So I go to like a McDonald's and some guy just gets stabbed, shot up. If someone goes into prison more than 3 times, then they should be imprisoned indefinitely. They clearly aren't. Yo, that's what I'm saying, bro. There's so many stories where they're like, yeah, he went to jail and then he came back. And then he went to jail and he came back. Like, bro! If he's coming back to jail, you gotta put him in the mental asylum. Gotta keep his ass in jail. You can't keep freaking go to jail, come back. Go to jail, come back. Go to jail, come back. It's like, bro. He's not learning from his lessons. The straw one that's ridiculous, bro. I would be scared to work at McDonald's in America because if you mess up, you could literally die. Imagine having that fear. Ridiculous. Actually ridiculous, bro. Anyways, that's everything from me. W video. Thank you guys for staying till the end and watching. And I'm gonna see y'all in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe and peace out.